Welcome to A Celtic State of Mind. I'm John Dykes, and today I'm delighted to be joined by Lawrence Connolly for the Axon Bulletin. Lawrence, welcome back. How was your Christmas, sir?
It was great, you know.
Good.
Celtic playing better.
Yeah.
Clean sheets, scoring goals, 2 up top.
Well, I can't deny it. I can't deny any of this, mate. I can't. Well, is everybody on the Lenny bus? This will obviously creep into our conversation, Lawrence, because over the last several months, we have had differing opinions on Neil Lennon. But I think when you're looking at the situation now, what we were basically asking for is we need to start putting a run of results together. That's exactly what we've done now. When you're analysing every nuance of every performance, Lawrence, and picking holes and this and that, that's fine, but we are getting the results. And, what I'm trying to look at today is this week is massive in the great scheme of things. It's absolutely huge. And by the way, I'm not looking ahead to the Rangers game and just taking the Dundee United game for granted. I just think that, 2 results in the next couple of weeks and all bets are off, Lawrence. All bets are off. And obviously that starts tomorrow afternoon. So we will be looking at that game first and foremost. What's your thoughts? Because I know that you stood firm when people like myself were saying that a change was required a few months back.
I still think we need a structural change in the way it's run. Whether that's managerial, I'm not too sure. But, definitely if we do change the manager, or even if we stick with Lenny, he should be allowed to choose his background coaching. And, football decisions should be made by the football department. I think rather than... we've got there's been a number of players that have been signed that managers have known nothing about. That's just what's wrong.
No, I agree with that. Listen, it's one of the things, Lawrence, you know what I mean? If one of those players that you knew nothing about turns into a Van Dijk, then you don't mind it. It always seems to be the ones that, turn into a waste of a few million quid. So yeah, I don't disagree with that at all. I think that structurally there will have to be a change, but in order to make that structural change, I don't think we can do it with the current personnel within the boardroom. I don't think that Peter Lawwell would operate in any other way. I think he needs to have that kind of level of control, Lawrence. So that was always the bigger and wider issue that, was never going to be dealt with mid-term or during a season, is it? I mean, that's a more longer-term view. Yeah,
definitely. It's, the rumours are Desmond's had his people in looking. Hopefully, we've got another Scottish Cup and 10 league titles in a row at the end of the season when we sit down to review how we should operate going forward. The club, forever there's mistakes we can see getting made in the preparation of a season on the signing of players taking too long.
Yeah.
It puts us in the back foot when it comes to European qualifiers and how much money do we miss out on not being prepared for Europe.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, hopefully I'll look at that. But, we've got business this week. Dundee United's not going to be easy. Mickey Mellon got them playing well. And then, of course, we've got the other Glasgow team, not Thistle, the other one, over on the south side of the city.
Well, we'll certainly be delving into that, Lawrence, because I won't see you between now and the game against Rangers. So we'll be talking about both games. Dundee United, obviously, in mourning due to the passing of the great Jim McLean. It's a figure that, people of our era, because I think we are from the same era, there or thereabouts, Lawrence. He was like an omnipresence in Scottish football, wasn't he? And it's only when you get a wee bit older that you look back and you realise, what he did with a club like Dundee United was absolutely off the scale, getting into European finals, winning the league with such a small squad. And this actually takes me back. This is interesting. It's just come to light, actually. I hadn't had this written down. But from a very young age, Lawrence, I was interested in chatting to footballers and getting their stories and all this kind of stuff, right? And the very first interview I ever did with a guy called John Riley. Now, that might not be a household name, but he was part of that league winning side under Jim McLean. And it just so happened that when I was getting into contacting people and interviewing them with no platform to put the interview out, it was just something I was interested in doing as a kid. He was the manager of Cowdenbeath at that stage, and I wrote to the club and I said, I'd love to interview you about your time at Dundee United. And you know what? He came to my house. He chapped on my door. Honestly, they chapped on my door one night, this guy, John Riley. And I remember he sat for a good couple of hours. He was a manager of Cowdenbeath. You'll check him out on Wikipedia. He was part of that league winning side. And he came in, my mum made him a cup of tea, and he basically gave me like a 90-minute interview. And at that time, I didn't even have a dictaphone. I was writing everything down, you know what I mean? So I was able to, I'll have the notes somewhere, knowing me with my archive, but many of those stories that stuck in my mind were all about, obviously, Jim McLean and the way that he built this club. Because back then, Lawrence, you know, he was, you know, cut from the cloth, very similar to the likes of Jock Stein or, you know, even Don Revie, Brian Clough. These guys, they didn't just look at the football operation, did they? They were interested in everything, contracts, where the guys lived, because he was all about having them all living in Broughty Ferry and everything up in that neck of the woods. So yeah, a great loss to the Scottish game, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. You know, as you say, European trophies, won the League Cup. Rumours of the European Cup semi being fixed, refs being bribed. Developed some cracking young players, and you know the old Dundee U boys, obviously, were the smaller club in Dundee, weren't they? You know, and he really put them on the map.
He did.
And not just in Scotland, but you know, in Europe, they were a major force.
Yeah, you know what, as well though, when you look at it, and I did read the Duncan Ferguson biography. It was written by Alan Paciolo, the Courier writer, very, very good writer. And there was this wave of players at Dundee United, Lawrence. Times had changed, so when you think back to the great side that McLean built first time round, and Davy Neary, Paul Sturrock, Paul Hegarty and Maurice Malpass, so many of those players stayed with the club, didn't they? I know that some of them left, and Ralphie Milne and Richard Gough, etc., and they left. But then he had another wave, and it was, you know, Andy McLaren, Christian Daly, Duncan Ferguson, Ray McKinnon even was part. You know, an unbelievable crop of players coming through. But the times had changed, and these guys were looking for their big moves. Obviously, Daly went down south. You know, Ferguson went there via Rangers. And when you look at that, you just think to yourself, Jim McLean couldn't change his ways. But the players were changing and the times were changing, because if he'd kept that crop together again, that could have been a force in Scottish football.
Yeah, some cracking players he had there, wasn't it? He was always one for giving youth a chance, wasn't he? You know, I suppose maybe that was the synthesizer. United, they didn't really have the money to go out and buy, no matter how successful they were. You know, the crowds were fairly limited. But yeah, some cracking players there. A couple of Hamish McAlpine ended up playing for us as well.
He did, didn't he?
Yeah.
Was it a one game and a friendly?
I think Celtic were short for some reason. I can't remember why, but yeah, there was one game.
There's a great picture of him, yeah, with the Celtic Tammy and all that on. Yeah. Hamish McAlpine. Absolutely. He was the only player that got McLean to drop the training, because it was non-stop for training. You'll remember McAlpine was a bit hit and miss at crosses, and he eventually persuaded McLean to give up on him, saying, "Look, boss, I know what you're trying to do, but the more I'm practicing, the worse I'm getting." So eventually, McAlpine got his way. And he did. He was known to take a penalty, was McAlpine. But the reason we're talking about Jim McLean, as well as the fact that Scottish football's lost an absolute great in Jim McLean, is that obviously we're facing Dundee United tomorrow. And I'm taking nothing for granted. Yeah, it's only natural that you're looking to the game coming up against Rangers, Lawrence, but we have a very tough obstacle to overcome before we face Stephen Gerrard's men, and that is in this Dundee United side. You look at even just the forward line of Mark McNulty and Loris Shankland, you think, well, you know, I'm hoping that we have a central defensive partnership that is Ayer and Duffy, or Ayer and Julien, depending on injuries, you know, because, and I'm not criticising Nir Beaton, I just don't think that there is that same partnership there for tomorrow. That's my biggest concern for tomorrow's game, you know.
Yeah, definitely. I don't think we've got a partnership. I'd still keep Ayer at right back. I'm not convinced of the Julian Duffy partnership. I think they're too similar. I don't think they move together well in the park as a partnership. So I'd play one of them. And beating, I suppose, is maybe more of a sweeper. He doesn't get attracted to the ball as much as Julian or Duffy do. So maybe a partnership there. I don't know, but it's certainly something that we need to be sorting out. You know, once we get through these 2 games in the transfer window,
yeah,
that's where we need to be looking at strengthening.
We need to. I mean, Beaton or Bitton, what's his name? Bitton.
Yeah.
Beaton should have scored a couple of goals against Hamilton. I mean, he had 2 brilliant chances in the box from corners, as it happens, and he probably should have scored both of them. Yeah,
definitely. He's not averse to a long-range shot either. He's scored a few crackers at distance. I'm not completely against him at centre-half, as a stand-in, but we've got 2 games to get through. He's an experienced player for us. Maybe Lenny will shock us. Maybe he'll bring back young Welsh, who didn't do too much long in the games he'd done. But I suspect he'll be at right back and Beaton and Jay.
Is that with one eye on the encounter at Ibrox as well, though? Lawrence, when you're thinking about the width that they have from their fullbacks, and again, I want to concentrate on Celtic, of course I do, but when I look at that side, then you are looking at, Tavernier having the season of his life, and a lot of that is offensively. And on the other side, Barisic, if fit, is, I think, one of their best players as well. So I asked the question yesterday before I dropped out of the conversation to leave Kevin and Russell to it. How do we nullify that? Because that is one of the biggest threats, not forgetting other areas of the park, which I think they have improved in.
Well, Jim Goodwin said it, the way he beat them was simple, just nullify the fullbacks. He was almost playing it back six at some points, but he said, just nullify the fullbacks, and that was it. That was his game plan. Tavernier's obviously having a better season than Barisic, but that's where their dangers are going to come from. That and set pieces, fouls and perhaps penalties, who knows.
Again, Lawrence, it's sometimes difficult actually to go through a conversation about the game without that cropping up, and it's one of these things because you don't want to, focus entirely on the issues of the officials. But when you're seeing it, the game against Hibs, for example, which I predicted would be a 1-1, mainly because Jack Ross loves a 1-1 draw. If you look at these previous jobs, but it should have been at least a 1-1. And that does concern me. It really does concern me. But in saying that, and I'm probably going to get pelters for this, when you look at Bobby Madden as the man in charge, it's even hard for me to say it, but probably the best of a bad bunch. Now, I'm going to get pelters for that. People are going to pick up on specific decisions he got wrong against Celtic. But I've seen him performing pretty strongly in this type of game. Yeah,
on occasions, but... You've got to query the SFA. Ex-Rangers season ticket holder Bobby Madden referees the game.
Who else do you get though? I could probably. I know.
Someone that has such a strong affiliation. He was a season ticket holder to one team.
He denied that, I think, didn't he? When was he on the Cy Ferry show? And he denied that.
Go watch the other podcasts, mate, to be honest.
Well, that's fair enough. No, it's a difficult one, and I do expect pelters for saying anybody is a good referee in Scotland, but it gets to the point where it's what's the best of the bad bunch. There was an interview in one of our other shows this week, actually, with Willie Conker. Quite an interesting interview in actual fact, because obviously a Celtic State of Mind is part of the State of Mind media company. One of the other shows that we have is a Friday night chat show called the Salt and Sauce Show, and Willie Conker is this week's guest. So it's an interesting insight into the makeup of Scottish officialdom. But before we go any further, I must say people will be looking at this show today and saying it's a Tuesday. Where is Natasha? Natasha is otherwise engaged at this moment in time, but she will be back for the normal slot this time next week, and possibly at some point this week as well. So you're going to have to make do with Lawrence and I, but we did promise before we came on air that we weren't going to fall out because there isn't a referee to keep us in line, Lawrence. The other thing I was going to mention was that top you've got on is an absolute belter. I mean, that could almost be a Celtic retro top with the Adidas if you were to put a crest on there. Is it Jamaica?
Yeah, Jamaica 80s, mate. But no Jamaican badge on it, but just the colours. So, yeah.
Excellent. Now, well, yeah, it's one of these things. It's that period of time between Christmas and New Year, Lawrence, where you want to keep the fires burning on a Celtic State of Mind, because people are off on holiday, etc. As you can maybe see from my surroundings, I am not. My home office basically wasn't working, so I am now working from the studio again. But when we're looking at tomorrow's game, before we look at tomorrow's game, Lawrence, I'm going to go to some of the comments that are coming through. This year has been incredible with regards to the live and interactive side of a Celtic State of Mind, because obviously we were an audio podcast before, and in January, Lawrence, our monthly figure was just under 15,000, and I'm ticking along thinking, oh, that's all right, that's pretty good. And it was mainly an interview-based show where we were interviewing one. In fact, what we normally did was we would get a session up at the toll booth in Stirling once a month, 4 hours, 4 interviews, and that would see us for a month. And that was basically how we were doing it. High quality production, because it was done by the mixing team at the toll booth, and that's how we were doing it. And then we decided, obviously part of that decision was made for us during lockdown. We need to create more content. We went live, and although I have to get the final figures in the month of December, we're sitting at 1 million. That's our audience, 1 million. Now obviously we're producing far more content and we're going out on more platforms, but that's astonishing. But that's down to not just people like yourself who are contributing, and Natasha and Kevin and Russell and all the rest of the team, but the people who have embraced it and getting involved, and you get to know a lot of the names popping up time and time again on the comment section. So I've got to thank everybody for getting involved in what we're doing here. We've got bigger plans to expand it. The Bulletin will always be a daily bulletin at 12:30, but there's other shows that we're looking at, a Celtic State of Mind related, Lawrence, going into 2021. But again, these things are generated by the reaction you get from the audience. So let's have a look at some of the chat coming through. Patrick Murphy, quite a lot of talk about Saturday among fans, but tomorrow is massive. If we don't beat Dundee United, then Saturday holds little value in a title race. That would effectively be over. 100% focus on Wednesday. Now, I tend to agree with Patrick, Lawrence, because I did see some comments during the week from James McFadden, who obviously is a Celtic fan, a couple of opportunities in his career to sign for Celtic. I would have liked to have seen him in a Celtic jersey at a couple of points of his career. And he was talking, as well as talking about David Turnbull's impact at Celtic, obviously the former Motherwell man. He was talking about the fact that Celtic can't drop a point. Some Celtic fans were quite critical of that. But when I'm looking at the situation as it stands, Lawrence, I think that's where we are just now. We really can't drop any more distance or between Celtic and Rangers at this moment in time. And when, for example, Rangers had the early kick-off at the weekend and he beat Hibs 1-0, the way I was kind of looking at the Hamilton game is, right, we need to win more than 1-0. Because we need to at least claw back a few of these goals. There's a big deficit there. So some people might think that James McFadden or indeed Patrick are overreacting. I don't. I actually agree with that. I think we've got to get maximum points until such times as we're up there 3 or 4 points behind Rangers. Because otherwise, we're looking at a situation where we need to win every other derby for the rest of the season, and it would need to be a ridiculous scoreline. 8-0, 8-0, 9-0.
I think, for the past few weeks, we've been, every game's a must-win game, isn't it? I think Patrick's right, it's bang on. Every game's must-win, which maybe makes, it's coincided with us hitting a bit of run of form, maybe it's focused the minds a bit more. Lenny's eventually played kind of the diamond in midfield. When you talk about contributors, I think Philip DeMarco on here mentioned it months back that's what we should have been playing, the two up top. So defence is, I think we've got to play a settled team against Dundee United. We've got to play a similar team to that's going to start against Rangers. But yeah, every game is must win just now. Can't afford to drop any. It looked like against Hibs as they might have dropped points. Even the previous game against United, with St Alfie and his blessed forearm, it looked like they might have been in trouble there. But yeah, but we've got to kind of take care of business every game now.
No, you're right. And by the way, I did mention that. You'll remember, Lawrence, because I was, looking at young Smith, who's a fullback at Dundee United and who scored that day, Liam Smith, big Celtic man. Just for anybody who wants to watch his progress, Dundee United, obviously it was 2-1 that day. It certainly wasn't a convincing victory for Rangers, and as you say, they were lucky they got out of jail with regards to that red card that should have been given. The St Mirren defeat obviously during the week, and then Motherwell went ahead. I know the Rangers eventually pulled that back to 3-1, and then the 1-0 against Hibs, and again you're looking at a couple of dodgy refereeing decisions in terms of the penalties, and again I don't want to focus on that, Lawrence, because then people say, oh, it's conspiracies and yous are scraping the barrel, etc. But these things are happening, and, you know, they're being discussed on other platforms within the media in terms of the poor refereeing decisions that day. So I do feel that there will come a point where that St Mirren game, now I would much rather that was in the league, I've got to say, in terms of the League Cup game. But I do think there will come an occasion where Rangers maybe drop points unexpectedly, and it's at that point that if you've not been on it, and I look back to that St Johnstone 1-1 game, Lawrence, where we dominated the first half, couldn't break them down, same old story kind of thing. They take the lead, we're chasing it for a draw. These are the games that you look back on it, you know, and think that's the 2 points that, you know, really would have pulled us right back into this race here. So yeah, I totally agree with that, but that takes us up nicely to tomorrow's game. So we'll have a few more comments coming in. Richard Murray commenting on YouTube, and for anybody who is watching on YouTube, because we're getting some massive figures on there, but please remember to subscribe, because there will be loads of other content, and as I say, new shows as well coming out under the Celtic State of Mind banner over 2021, and all free. Richard says that he agrees with Patrick. We need to win all games right now to stand any chance. Beating Sefco, which is a wee term that you like to use, Lawrence, when you're referring to Rangers, is very important, but not the only issue here. We've struggled in games like this tomorrow, and that has to stop. I think one of the games that I've already mentioned is typical of a fixture like tomorrow, and that was the St Johnstone game, where you're looking at the first half, Lawrence, and it was all Celtic, it was all possession, and as Colin quite rightly said the other day, possession doesn't give you goals, and it certainly hasn't been for Celtic. We were unable to break them down. They then took the lead because we were so bad at the back. Tomorrow we need to ensure that doesn't happen. I mean, the Hamilton game, Lawrence, when you look back on that, I think at half time I was saying, you know, we've seen this so often this season where we've dominated the first half, we've had plenty of chances, but I had a different feeling at half time, because I did feel that, you know, and I'm the biggest critic of Lenny not changing things. I just thought, you know what, just keep doing what you're doing. We're going to break this side down. I expect the same thing to happen tomorrow. I think it's going to be very cagey in the first half, but Celtic have got enough to break this Dundee United side down. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think Dundee United will be a bit more forward thinking than St Johnstone were. So, you know, I wouldn't be surprised to see scoring before half time. We're starting to get hit a bit of form with players like Mikey Johnson coming back. So we've got some options now, which we haven't had kind of wide options for most of the season. So at least we've got some options here. But yeah, I think there's going to be goals in the game. As you touched on, well, we've had a couple of clean sheets. We're not really settled at the back, but especially the centre half pairing. Mm-hmm. I'm quite happy at either Taylor or Diego at left back, Ayer at right back, Julian and one out if he's fit, and one other. Who that's going to be? I think it probably be on just for his experience with Ibrox coming up. Maybe try and get the two of them playing together. Yeah.
Duffy was coming back into the game, Lawrence. He was obviously on the bench at Hamilton. I mean, for me, the best central defensive partnership is Ayer and Julian that we have. But I take your point. I think if you want to play Ayer at right back with one eye on the game at Ibrox, then my second choice would then be Duffy. Now, that is only based on 2 or 3 performances, I've got to say. Obviously, it's taken him a wee while to settle in.
Yeah, maybe him and Julian just need some time to establish that partnership. I just think both of them seem to get drawn to the ball, and both of them like to go and attack the ball rather than one of them kind of dropping behind the other. And so maybe that'll come with time, with you know, on the pitch together. He's definitely a good threat offensively, Duffy. You know, there isn't a game you wouldn't bet against him scoring in from a header, is there? You know, he's got to be pretty short odds of getting a goal when he starts.
Especially now, Lawrence, that we have the the magical David Turnbull corners. Something that, we've been banging on about all season is the lack of any kind of result from corner kicks. We win so many, particularly domestically, in every game, and we just simply weren't getting anything from them. I had a very interesting discussion the other day with Paul Sheridan, pal of yours. Obviously, people will know Paul from the Wakes, and we were talking about a book called The Numbers Game. And it was talking all about the statistics within football. And some of the things, we both read the book, and a couple of the things that really stood out for me was you're best not to flight a corner in. You're best just to get the ball back and play. And they'll give you all these statistics that, you're very, very unlikely to actually score from a corner, from a header. And it's bizarre because I think Barcelona implemented that a few seasons ago, didn't they, in Spain, where basically you just tap it, play it short, and get the ball back and play. It's like you're playing 7-a-sides. The other one was the actual passing movements. Before a passing movement breaks down, that results in a goal. And it's something like, when you looked at that goal we scored at McDiarmid Park, 22 passes, you had Lustig crossing it in with the heel and all this kind of stuff, and it was Dembele that finished it, I think. 22 passes or 24 passes. The chances of that happening are 1 in a million, because normally a goal scoring move's made by, I think it's between 4 and 6 passes. Incredible.
Yeah, but Jimmy Hill used to do that with Coventry way back in the 60s, and he'd take them up the divisions. 60s, 70s, he'd take them up, and that was his idea, it was like 4 passes to get it in the box, just hit it down the line and the wingers would run around it, and it's his job to get it across. But fairly basic stuff, but he looked into the stats way back then and said, look, this is your best chance.
It seems basic. It seems basic, but Celtic, I think it's something that was implemented by Brendan Rodgers, Lawrence. It was the pass constantly. If it doesn't work out, go back, try again. But what that takes away from, I think, from Celtic is a dynamic element. And that's where I continually stand up for Ryan Christie, even though I know his failings, I really do. But I consistently stand up for him because I think sometimes he is the guy you look to make the risky pass. Yeah, the move might break down, but the flip side of that is the ball ends up nestling in the back of the net, or he cuts through the defence and sets something up.
Yeah, and even if it breaks down, it might be their full-back's got it near the touchline. You've got to take on the risk, haven't you? If you don't take the shot, you're going to score. So yeah, Christie takes a bit of flack, but he does score some crackers, especially cup final. That was a wonderful goal against Hearts. And if you want to come back to the refereeing decisions, the review of that, or non-review of the Naismith stamp.
I know.
When is a club going to speak out?
Well, exactly. The stamp was there for all to see. It was so elongated as well, though, Lawrence, that Scott Brown had the opportunity, whilst he was still being stamped on, to look up to the referee and say, can you see what everybody else is seeing here? So that is frustrating, as is, for example, the barge on Hazard during that same game. Obviously, it's a game you and I enjoyed together, watching it together, and just to let you know, in actual fact, our videographer has put together a wee package of that game, which I'm going to be uploading onto YouTube, because obviously we were online for about 4 or 5 hours covering the game. So all the high points and all the emotion and all those moments where you forgot you were actually on camera have all been caught and compressed, and that will be up on our YouTube channel. So if you are watching on YouTube, make sure you subscribe. Helen McCallum, good to hear from you, Helen. You are watching on YouTube and you're saying that get a good result tomorrow, get some momentum going into Saturday's derby. I think we have got a bit of momentum. That's what we were kind of calling for, Lawrence. You might disagree with the selection, you might disagree with the style of play and say that it's a sticky plaster. A lot of people are saying that, but we have got that bit of momentum. We're going into the game tomorrow, we've got to run together, win the game tomorrow. Would you be confident to go to Ibrox if we win tomorrow?
Yeah, definitely. I think they're hitting a bit of a sticky patch. We've touched on, but for, I don't know, well, it's not unsighted refs, but for a few strange refereeing decisions, they may have dropped 4 points over the last 4 games. So I think, it could be said that they're in a sticky patch. They've got a couple of players that may be missing through injury. We seem to have found a formation that suits us. We've got players back from injury that's given us options. We're 2 up top. We've got Eddie and Griff now both looking like they want to be on that part scoring goals, which we've not had for most of the season.
I'll come back to Eddie, Lawrence, because it's something I wanted to discuss yesterday, but obviously my tech failed and I had to leave it to Kevin and Russell to talk about throwing hedgehogs at dartboards and everything else. I'm not sure if you tuned in. It was an entertaining show. David Bradley, welcome to the show, sir. And Zinko Vix, who is a regular contributor, also welcome to the show. SPFL Comedy says that the bookies have Rangers odds on, Celtic 5-2 draw, 13-5. That's not encouraging, but you know what? We could bash the bookies, couldn't we?
Yeah, but bookies are just a reflection of how much money's been laid, aren't they? It's at this stage of the game, there's going to be so much money in the game. But listen, win tomorrow. I'd be confident going to Ibrox, getting a result. It'll be interesting to see if we stick with 4-4-2 or we were going to play at Ibrox. But we've got two strikers, definitely, probably the best two strikers in Scotland. They play tomorrow and score goals.
And a partnership, Lawrence. And a partnership, a real partnership.
Yeah, turn the season last year, or turn of the year. Those boys were on fire, weren't they?
Well, that I said odds on, and what I meant was evens, but odds on, Edouard is going to be the next subject to discuss, actually. Gerald McCune, welcome to the show. And Zinko also agrees that a structural change is required, and I think that most Celtic fans would agree with that. I read a story today going on about the chairman at Celtic and how we need someone far more dynamic to chair. When you're looking at that board and you're looking at, you ask any Celtic fan who are the decision makers at Celtic, and they'll name Dermot and Peter, and you think, well, where's the other driving forces in that boardroom, Lawrence? I don't think we have any.
We used to have strong characters, John Reid, like him or not, and Brian Quinn, guys with real gravitas. And I think it was David Lowe, and he said on the podcast a while back as well, in his interview, it needs freshening up. It needs a bit of change and a bit of new blood in there. Everybody, I think, just takes it as Desmond and Peter that make the decisions. But that outwardly seems to be the appearance. So what the rest of them picking up wages for, I don't know.
And the free trips to European away legs, etc. But again, that's another discussion we'll have on another podcast, I'm sure, Lawrence, at some stage from Facebook. We can't go back the way and bring Brown back in. This is another discussion. We must stick with the youth. Now, Colin Watt, who is getting involved in the comment sections, and I will be bringing Colin into this discussion via his comments, he was saying that he expects the team to start tomorrow to be the team that we would expect to see at Ibrox. Lawrence, do you think that's Lenny's thinking?
Could be, you don't know if we play 4-4-2 again and get a good win tomorrow. No injuries. Yeah, I think so. Especially a centre-half partnership, we really need to get that. Yeah, some game time for whoever it's going to be that's going to go to Ibrox. We've got to be thinking about how we're going to deal with the wingers, attacking fullbacks there. So yeah, I think Colin's got a good point. Will Lenny change anything? Will they do for Ibrox? Would they put a man marker on it, Tavernier? I don't know. Jim Goodwin's touched on it. That's kind of how he nullified them. Just take care of fullbacks, and that stops most of the threat. So I don't know if Lenny will change it if he gets a good win tomorrow night. He may feel that it's a few wins in the top. We've got a system that's working now. Why change it?
Yeah. Well, the big thing again, though, Lawrence, is we've got Scott Brown, who not only entered the 500 club, he's played over 600 games for the club now. So decorated as a Celtic captain, so influential over a number of years. But this momentum, this run of games, other than the cup final, of course, which actually Scott Brown was very influential in, has, it's been at the same time, as Scott Brown being removed from the side and Sorrell coming in. So I wasn't sitting here day after day saying we need to drop Brown. But what we have seen since he's dropped out of the side is a completely different dynamic within that area of the park, Lawrence. And then you ask the question, well, you looked at what Neil Lennon did for the Scottish Cup final, and obviously the pick-up in form had coincided with Brown being out, but he brings Brown back in for the Scottish Cup final. He kind of hinted leading up to it that he was going to do that. And then after the game, due to injury as much as anything else, Brown's back out the side. Do you think that he's going to try the same tact at Ibrox?
You know, Brown is great 45 minutes. We saw what he said. He's a competitor, if nothing else. Even against Milan, he did a good 60 minutes, but it's getting a full 90 minutes out of him. To be honest, I hope he starts with Sorrell. He's a lot more energy, covers more ground, and he moves the ball quicker. He moves the ball forward quicker. So I'm hoping he starts with Sorrell. If he brings Brown in, you know, do you think they're going to get 90 minutes out of him? Which is the big question just now. You know, his second half performance against Hearts definitely waned a little, which is maybe why Hearts come into the game so much. So I think Brown's probably a great option, having a bench. The bench is best place for him. You know, bring him on the second half to push things on. Or he may try something weird like use him as a man marker. You know, who knows? Because he is, as I touched on, he's a great competitor. If you put him 1-on-1 against somebody, you'd back Scott Brown to win his battles all the time in Scotland. I think he's just got that streak in him. Yeah,
he does. He certainly does. He is still up for the battle, no doubt about that. But sometimes, again, you can get too involved in that kind of drama, that sideshow. And I think it's Sorrow. The fact that I'm not going to say there's a naivety about him, but sometimes that works in your favour because you're fearless. You're going into a game, and for him, it's a big game. Of course, it is, but he doesn't have that baggage. He doesn't have that history. For example, Scott Brown versus Scott Arfield. I know Arfield's probably struggling to actually make the game. But the other thing I was going to ask you, Lawrence, is in terms of the fullbacks. Obviously, Jimmy Goodwin did brilliantly well the other week there. And defeated Rangers again. Obviously, the referee pulled up in the warm-up, but again, that was maybe just lucky on our part. St Mirren, you know, might approach the game, you know, similarly in the league. I'd be surprised if they were to get anything out. I'd love it if they did. But when we're playing them, I guess you could take it a different way entirely. You can either try and soak up the offensive nature of Barisic and Tavernier. And if you were going to do that, I reckon you're looking at Taylor at left back because his defensive abilities, maybe Ayer at right back. But if you're going to try and attack these guys, stretch them, pull them out of position, what are our options? So you're looking, well, we've got Jeremy Frimpong. Jeremy Frimpong really disappointed in that first game against Rangers, Lawrence. I watched that game with you. He was almost fearful to try to take on his man, which is his instinct always to take on his man. On the left-hand side, what's our options there? Again, El Yunusi really failed to impress in that game. Missed a brilliant chance. And I know he's not a left winger as such, but if he's in that area of the park, welcome to the show. What's your dog's name, Lawrence?
That's Jacob. Yep,
oh, lovely. Lovely, Jacob. And on the left-hand side, we've got El Yunusi, who I think could stretch them, and I'm not saying as a winger, but obviously he loves to come inside. Somebody needs to pick him up. And then you've got the question of Mikey Johnston, because Mikey Johnston obviously has started to come in. We've not seen a great deal of him, Lawrence. He's obviously trying to work his way back to match fitness. If he starts tomorrow, that is going to be a very interesting selection, because then I start thinking about him at Ibrox. He's been criticised for some of his previous performances at Ibrox. Some might argue that he was hung out to dry a wee bit previously, played out of position. I think he could be key. I really do. I think he could be key at Ibrox. And by the way, as Colin Watt quite rightly pointed out the other week, either side, he could play right or left.
Yeah, he's definitely gives us options. I mean, the first Rangers game, I think Frimpong, you looked at it, 2 or 3 players on him. But every time he got the ball, we were that slow getting the ball out to him as well. So I think Rangers had perhaps identified he was our main danger man. We didn't have a lot of options wide. So I think they knew the plan was get the ball to Frimpong, and he was going to get yards up the pitch. You can always so fast. And they looked to nullify that. So we've got some options. Yeah, Mikey Johnston, it's good to have him back. Let's see if he starts against Dundee United. I think that's going to be a bit. He's definitely going to be an option that I'd like to see him get some minutes at some point against Rangers. You know, he's got goals in him. He can beat a man. He's got great feet on him, hasn't he? So yeah, definitely like to see Mikey. What will Lenny do? You know, will he do anything like man mark? honestly, I'd like to see him maybe try and man Mark Tavernier. I remember Arnone done it against Laudrup, and Laudrup didn't get a kick of the ball and completely stopped him that game. Would Lenny do something tactical like that? A change? Obviously, it's going to kind of change the formation then. Maybe. Yeah, I don't know, but Jim Goodwin's touching it. You stop him, you more or less stop their game. Because I don't know if Barish is going to be fit, is he, to play against us?
He played against Hibs, so I would need to have a look at the lineup tomorrow, Lawrence, and see if he starts.
Yeah. So, yeah, hopefully, the coaches at Celtic are giving Lenny some advice. They'll have been watching the video. I'm sure it's just rumours that they don't watch it, that they'll be watching how Rangers play it. It's no surprise. It's 4-3-3. They're going to come out and they're going to try and put everything through their full-backs. They're going to go down easily and try and get free kicks in and around the box to get crosses in. I think that's generally how they seem to play against teams. We've got to be wise that don't be giving away cheap fouls because the ref will give he will give the free kicks.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, Colin Watt is coming in to suggest massive game tomorrow. Absolutely, Colin. Dundee United, no mugs. The team that starts tomorrow should be the team that plays January the 2nd. Obviously, two entirely different games, but I get what Colin's saying, and I think that if we do look at Mikey Johnson appearing tomorrow, then, to be honest with you, Lawrence, I'd be pretty excited with that because, I think that the width has been one of our biggest issues this season. Laxalt doesn't give us width. I do rate Laxalt. I think he brings a lot to the table, but he doesn't give us width. He doesn't hit the byline and cross it over. He does a lot of other things really, really well. Frimpong's brilliant at taking out a man, but we wish he would hit the byline a wee bit more often. He started doing it. You can see that it's getting coached into him, Lawrence. Not finished the article yet. And I think the only natural guy that we've got that does that at the moment is Mikey. So if we do see him, it'll be very interesting. El Yunusi's a different player altogether, isn't he?
Yeah, El Yunusi, for me, he's just too hot and cold. It really is. He's one of those guys that's like a 9 or a 3, and it's very rarely anything in between. And you just don't know if he's going to turn up. I don't think we can afford to be carrying players, which is what sometimes you end up doing with El Yunusi. You end up carrying him.
You do.
Which is a shame because he's definitely got talent. It's just that he's not consistent enough.
Big thing for me, Lawrence, I keep saying this. I always say, you can't play El Yunusi and Cham and Rogic in the same team because you won't get 3 performances out of those 3 players. You might get 1. Yeah,
definitely. Maybe that's what's changed in our midfield. You look at Turnbull, Christie, McGregor, the 3 of these, they're non-stop guys, aren't they? They're running all the time. They're giving you everything. You're not carrying passengers. Even if they're not having a good game, their touch isn't maybe in that day, they're still working. They're still getting back, they're still getting between the goal and the ball, they're still putting a shift in and making it all difficult for the opposition. Could we really say that about Moy, Cham and Rogic? But anyhow,
I know. I would actually expect, in Cham, I think I would expect him to move on in January. The club have come out after speculation appeared in the Italian press, Lawrence. The club have made it clear that they've not made a statement, of course, but they have communicated with the player's agent, Odsonne Edouard, apparently to suggest that he's not going anywhere in January, and it'll be the summer before they start looking at that situation. The story, obviously, that appeared was in the Italian press in relation to Juventus and AC Milan being interested in the French striker. And there was a fee quoted of 30 million, which I thought I was quite surprised at under the circumstances of where we are in world economics, but also in the fact that his form has dipped fairly dramatically up until the last couple of weeks, where we're hoping to see some kind of recovery from Odsonne. And I use the word recovery because we can't forget the boy had COVID. He's fighting back. He's 22 years of age. He's a young player fighting back from the COVID. Yeah, he has had a loss of form. He's been up there on his own again, Lawrence, as he was for the first half of last season, almost praying for reinforcements, which appear to have arrived in the form of Lee Griffiths. Even though we've got a £5 million striker sitting on the bench, Lee Griffiths is now one of our first picks for Celtic, which is incredible when you look at where he's been this season. But Edouard, for me, is integral. If Celtic are serious about pulling this back, we need to keep Odsonne Edouard at the club. And I put out a tweet the other day there. And, you know, I don't mind getting criticised, and I don't mind people disagreeing with me, because that's just the nature of social media and podcasts like this, and it's healthy. It really is healthy. But I think, you know, what I was trying to say is that even at the levels that Odsonne is at the moment, he gets a game before Klimala, he gets a game before Ajeti. From what Klimala and Ajeti have shown me, I would still rather have Odsonne Edouard in a Celtic jersey, because I know that he's a game changer. He can give you that bit of magic. I think a few issues around his performances this season. He eventually wants away. I'm not seeing his demand on a move. No one looked happier than Odsonne Edouard in the Scottish Cup final, Lawrence, when we won the game. But he wants a move, of course he does. Very much like his countryman before him, Moussa Dembele. They get promised, we'll give you a platform, on you go. That platform, part of that platform is European football. We don't have it this season. He's probably got one eye on a transfer window in January. He might be in a mood if he doesn't get his move. But I think it's integral that we keep Odsonne Edouard. If we are serious about 10 in a row, which at the moment isn't a foregone conclusion that we're not going to win this. Obviously, we need to continue with the form. I think we need to strengthen in January. And we're hoping for some kind of derailment of sorts. I would expect Rangers to drop points anyway, even when they're playing well, because that's what happens, Lawrence. But I would expect Rangers to drop a few points. But going back to the very first point that was made on the show, that means Celtic need to win maximum points all the time. So I've not given up on 10 in a row, but I think if something happens in the transfer window in January and we lose Edouard, then I think it's a white flag.
Well, I think a lot is going to come down to the player. I mean, his form's dropped, but not the French under-21 side. You know, he's still banging them in there. So, it's, you know, I think we've cut Eddie a lot of slack this season that other players wouldn't have got cut just because of his potential. But if he doesn't get a move and then he gets back to sulking and not performing, I don't think that's going to bring Tenelo any closer. So, Celtic's statement that, you know, he's not for sale, what they're going to say, he's for sale. you know, I think it's a statement that it's expected. How much truth in it is in it, I don't know. But certainly, it'll push the price up. Them saying he's not for sale. If Eddie wants a move and demands it, are we going to be in a position to stop it? You know, we had to let Musa go. In the last day of the transfer window with no preparation of getting anyone in to replace him. At least that, but surely we've got some plans and we're looking at some strikers, because, as you said, I think we know Eddie's going to move on at some point. The question is it's going to be January or it's going to be the summer. And I think a lot of that's going to be down to the player, because if he just threatens down tools or goes back to looking like he's been most of the season, I'm not too sure how much he's going to contribute. Which, if we've got an offer of 30 million and we've got a replacement to bring in, it's going to be a hard one to say no to. Hold a player against his will when you know what kind of performances he put in the first half of the season. And I take it, you know, that he wasn't part of a two then, he didn't do partnership, that he seems to prefer playing in. But he was scoring for France under 21s. He was putting in some great performances for them. That certainly were mirrored on his time at the park for Celtic. So it's going to be a tough decision, and I suppose it's going to be based on the size of the bid. And hopefully we've already got a couple of replacements that we've identified and watched the YouTube highlights at least on and got reports on. Should the worst comes to the worst and it moves back on.
Absolutely. Now, Robert Highland is commenting, I am not on the Lenny bus. He still needs to go ASAP. The club is still going backwards. And Con Turk 67, I seriously don't see us taking anything off them. Not that we can look over United at the moment. These next two games are make or break for the 10. I think the next week is massive in terms of any hopes of 10 in a row. Alex Robb, Dundee United have had good results. It will be difficult tomorrow. I think they've had reasonable results. I mean, it's not as though they're setting the heather like Lawrence. Let's be honest. It's, you know, they've not gone on a 10-game winning streak. They've had reasonable results. So I was looking at their form over the last couple of months there. I think Celtic have got enough to overcome Dundee United, you know, the same way that we've, been winning games over the last few weeks. I do think that, you know, they're a decent enough side. I think that there's a bit of threat up front. Haas Shankland made that step up. We know that he's a championship player. He's very successful at that level. Has he made the step up? The question could be asked that, you could make the point that he's not at this level, because I'm saying that, and let's just hope he doesn't score the winning goal for Dundee United tomorrow. David Bradley got to win tomorrow big time, and Zinkovic. We need to put in a great performance tomorrow, puts us in a good state of mind for travelling to Grayskull. Now, I'm going to have to say something about Castle Grayskull. Remember, Castle Grayskull was for the good guys. Castle Grayskull was He-Man's. It was Snake Mountain that was the bad guys. So would you not be calling Ibrox Snake Mountain? I always hear it getting called Castle Grayskull. I'm an 80s kid, Lawrence. I'm an 80s kid, man.
Just call it Poundland.
Aye. There we go. Facebook reckon 4 points out of the next 2 fixtures keep Celtic in it. Now that's interesting, because if Celtic were to draw tomorrow, it would be pandemonium on the Bulletin come Thursday. And then if we go out and beat Rangers at Ibrox, you're then ruin the chance that you had to pull it back even longer. So 4 points, I don't even think that's enough, Lawrence.
No, I think we want to take 6 points. Then we're into, is it 4th of Jan transfer window opens?
Mm-hmm.
It appears that the club have some money, and really, Edwards' part is going to be part of the transfer window. But what else are we going to do? Are we going to look? We're going to start with young Con on goals, and we're going to look to bring a keeper in. Are we going to look to spend some money on white players? Because it was rumoured that Lenny wants a couple of white players in at the beginning of the season. He didn't get them. Are we going to put that right in this transfer window? As you say, is Cham going to move on? I don't think he's contributing a lot. We've got a lot of midfielders. The minutes I saw young Henderson get, I'd rather have him in the team than Cham just now. And so I think if we can move Cham on, it would be probably a wise thing to do. His contract's running down. I think both Brendan and Lenny have struggled to get the best out of him. There's definitely a player in there. He's definitely got a doubt of talent. Again, it's consistency. He doesn't show consistency enough and doesn't show that he wants it enough. So, yeah, I think moving him on. So I think it's 6 points. And then it's kind of, if Lenny can deliver 6 points, it's a big look over to Nicky Hammond and whoever else is involved in the decision of recruiting players and see what they have. Rumours we want young boy Robert from Airdrie.
Yeah.
But so hopefully we'll look at a couple of winners. Centre half. I don't know about the goalkeeping situation. If Connor keeps another 2 clean sheets, did we change?
I was going to ask you, Lawrence, about the goalkeeper situation moving into the January transfer window. I do expect Celtic to bring in another goalkeeper, but I also expect it to be a short-term fix, because we're looking at Barkas and we really can't risk throwing him back in, especially where we've got Conor Hazard, who is playing well enough to keep the jersey, certainly. Now, we've been told time and time again on the podcast, get over old players that you could maybe bring back. We've been told that about Paddy Roberts. We've been told that about Filip Benkovic, centre-half, who's barely kicked a ball since he left Celtic. And should we be getting told that about Fraser Forster, or is it a case of you just go out there and you try and negotiate, again, a deal to bring him back up the road, even if it's a short-term 6-month loan deal? And if that's the case, Lawrence, I would expect one of our goalkeepers to go. Now, then you're asking yourself, well, I wouldn't be expecting Conor Hazard to go, because he's shown enough that he is worthy of being part of that first team squad and pushing for the first team jersey. I think there has been some moments of his performance against Hearts that, questions might be asked about, but the boy's starting to get clean sheets, and I think he's going to grow in confidence. Going into the second half of this season, I think it would be pivotal to bring in someone like Fraser Forster, but then it begs the question, who leaves? Do you get a move for Scott Bain, who, for me, is a third choice goalkeeper every single day of the week for Celtic? Or do you try and cut your losses with Barkas? Or do you cut a deal whereby Barkas goes back to Greece on loan? These are all the questions. It wouldn't surprise me if we try to cut our losses on Barkas,
Depends what you can get in the market. With the emergence of a Connor, if you bring Fraser in, is it going to be short term, or would you look to resurrect a deal from the summer and bring him long term? You need to find a buyer, wouldn't you? For either Bain or Barkas. I suppose that's the thing. Barkas, we've got a longer contract. Bain, going to be in a shorter contract. Maybe it's time for him to move on. I'm thinking even if we bring in a number one, I'd like to see Connor get chances before Bain. We talk about the need to develop players. Are we really doing that? What's Scott Bain, 29? Connor's 22, 23. I think that, it's been a Barkas that you'd like to see move. I don't see us getting a buyer for Barkas just now. Maybe stock's high in Greece, but how much money would we need to lose on him? Are we talking about losing a couple of million before a club there would be interested? Even if you put him back on loan, does that really solve our issues? I'm not too sure. You want 3 good keepers. Maybe it is time to move Bain on, I think, if we get someone in. Gives a good signal to Connor. We can have a chat with him, because if we bring someone in, we're bringing him in to be number one. As you say, Connor's not really done anything. It is deserving of losing the jersey. So perhaps, I think Bain's probably the most likely to move on.
Yeah. You mentioned developing players, Lawrence. Now, as I said at the beginning of this show, as part of A State of Mind, which is the media company that we operate under, there are a number of other shows. One of them is a very regional show whereby Portobello 06s have a broadcast, and that allows parents and players to get involved in various challenges. And what we do is we try and get guests to come in and offer some advice to young football players, and we do it in the form of a Q&A, just a chat between me, and we've had people in like, Mickey Weir came in, we've had the goalkeeper Cammy Gill, who plays for Dunfermline, he's came in to offer advice, various others. Colin did one of the interviews with Gary Locke recently before the Scottish Cup final. So the other week there, we were visited by Jackie McNamara. I called him a Celtic legend on Twitter, and I think he is a Celtic legend. But what I got from that conversation, it's not the first time, Lawrence, that I've had this feeling about Jackie, is Jackie's got an edge, right? And you know what? I think that he was unfairly treated at Dundee United. And I also think that he made the wrong decision by going to York, and I don't think he would deny that himself. But when you look at the development of talent, Lawrence, often with a very, very small budget, Jackie McNamara worked wonders at Partick Thistle and also at Dundee United, and there's a whole list of players, as long as your arm, that he worked with, he brought into the clubs, he sometimes rescued from the scrap heap. A number of players, and I'm really every time I speak to him about youth development, I come away thinking that he has got it nailed. I actually did rate him as a manager, but obviously he's had his health scare, and I'm delighted to say that he's fighting fit. He's coming back really strongly from that. But I asked him, I always do, would you get back into management? And his answer always is never say never. But it's been on my mind over the last few days since I spoke to him, that he should be back at Celtic Park, and I think he should be involved in the Celtic Academy. I really do. I think that his ability to develop young players and identify young players, Lawrence, is incredible, and I think he's a great loss to Scottish football, but I also think he's a great loss to Celtic, and he should be in the academy in some capacity. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, definitely Celtic legend. It was sad to see him go. I think Celtic were slow in getting a contract offer to him at the time that he left. As you say, developed a number of young players. He had an interesting contract at United where he got rewarded for developing the players and selling them on. Definitely worked well for him, didn't it? So he seems to be able to spot players and bring them on. It's something we could be doing. Whether it's in the academy, I don't know. Maybe could be using him in the coaching setup as well. He definitely knows his football, Jackie. Him and Sid were very much a partnership though, weren't they? And any time I've heard Sid speak, he's kind of real switched on. So would you bring them in as a team to the academy?
Well, I think that he's got the ability to operate at quite a high level within an academy. You look at what he's done as a manager. He was the chief executive of York City Football Club. He knows a football club from grassroots right up to the very top. And I think that he could do very well in a high position within Celtic's academy. And I think that if another club were to see that potential and to give him a position, Celtic will be ruining that as a missed opportunity.
Yeah, he's definitely worth looking at, isn't he? You're then looking at moving someone on, but we do need to do better at developing players. Part of that's kind of getting them first team ready, isn't it? And knowing when they're going to be there. Hopefully, we'll have Mikey, Callum, Jamesy Forrest back before the end of the season. Connor, we've still got a reasonable number in and around the first team. But if Jackie can improve on that, definitely get him in.
Now, just for everybody who is tuning in on the comment section, obviously I'm multitasking, I'm monitoring the comments as I'm speaking to Lawrence, and I'm aware that a few are still falling through the cracks, and I am moving through them one by one, removing them. So I don't know what they've got in terms of time. They've got far too much time in their hands, Lawrence. I certainly don't have time to troll Rangers podcast and broadcast, but they really need to get a life, and they're being blocked one by one. We'll get through them. We definitely will get through them, and I'll have a look through the comments at the end of the show as well. So if you're going to come in with all that kind of nonsense, and by the way, I was going to mention that, the Alex Dyer story that broke in terms of racism. It just shows you out there, Lawrence, the cesspit that we inhabit. And I've seen a lot of it over the last few weeks and months on social media, on this broadcast, on this podcast. And, the nastiness and the toxic nature of people's states of mind. And it says so much more about them that someone would craft some kind of communication, I'm guessing it's a letter, and send it to Alex Dyer at Kilmarnock. Absolutely unacceptable behaviour. But I see it. Not always racist, I've got to say, but I see it on a day-to-day basis on here, presenting a Celtic State of Mind on social media, and people really need to get a grip. They really need to get a grip. I mean, it's a cesspit, it's toxic. Now, they can throw anything they want at me, absolutely anything. I can take every single bit of abuse they can throw at me, no problem. But there's a lot of people out there, Lawrence, who can't deal with that. Yeah. And it needs to be managed, it really needs to be policed.
Definitely. I mean, you want to look at whether a manager has been attacked in the street, attacked at his work, bombs and bullets through the post.
Mm-hmm.
I think the Celtic supporters, we appreciate, the dark side of the society we're living in, and it's something definitely needs to be policed and cracked down on.
Yeah. Absolutely. But we will be continuing to monitor it on a Celtic State of Mind, because, that element, Lawrence, are certainly not going to affect the 1 million views and listens that we've had in December. We're going to continue to build this platform, make it stronger, make it a place where Celtic fans can come and chat and disagree and debate. I mean, I do that. We did that last week. Watched the podcast. It was actually quite amusing. You love Lenny. I don't think he's the man for Celtic anymore, but that's just the way it is, and that's just the different views. And you know what? If we were going to the game in a car or on a supporters bus, or we're having a pint after the game, we could have the same discussion. We're not going to fall out about it. But that toxic nature of some people out there is absolutely unacceptable, and we'll root them out. We'll definitely weed them out. Lawrence, so if you're watching, you really need to find something better to do with your time. You really do, lads and lasses. But on that note, give me a wee prediction for tomorrow, Lawrence.
I'm going to go 3-0. I think we'll keep another clean sheet. I think we'll get the win. Tune us up for a win at Ibrox.
And will we get that win at Ibrox?
I think so. I think we're going to surprise a few critics. I think they've been looking shaky. Barring any kind of abominations by the referee, I can see he's winning 2 or 3-0 there. Right,
well, Lawrence, you'll be back on Tuesday to discuss that, both games, and you'll be joined by Natasha Meikle, who regularly joins us on Tuesday on the Bulletin. But all that's left for me to say, Lawrence Connolly, is thank you once again for joining me on A Celtic State of Mind.